Welcome to ibbusinessandmanagement.com. Today we're looking at 4.6 place. This is the final P in the 4 P's of the marketing mix. We've had a look at product, we've had a look at price, we've seen promotion, and finally we come to 4.6 place. I'm Mr. Burton. I hope you enjoy. I hope you learn something today. Place is essentially about distribution. It's about how we get our products to our customers. Place decisions are concerned with how products should pass from the manufacturer to the final customer. Channels of distribution, there are several of these that any firm can use. Here we define channel of distribution as being the chain of intermediaries. Intermediaries are third parties, someone between the manufacturer, the producer, and the consumer. And through the chain of intermediaries, a product passes from producer to the final consumer. Channels of distribution can be especially important for large companies, super large companies, multinationals. If you have a look at the crazy little map here behind the statistics, you can see that Coca-Cola consumption per person way back in 1996, it's definitely grown since then, was above 250 cans. 250 cans or small bottles of Coke per person on average. Per person on average. And that would have grown in these red countries that you see here. Now, if Coca-Cola wanted to get 250 cans to each person in each of these massively Coke-consuming countries, they just couldn't do it directly. They need to employ a stage of intermediaries between the Coke, the producer, and us, the consumer. So Coke doesn't distribute directly to the customer. What they do is they use supermarkets and other retailers. Coke will distribute to the retailers, to the supermarkets, to the wholesalers, and let the retailers, supermarkets, etc. get Coke's product to the final consumer. So the chain of distribution or channels of distribution, manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, through to the consumer. The manufacturer may use intermediaries to get it to the consumer, to get the product to the consumers. And each intermediary is going to add a profit margin. They're not going to distribute the product out of the goodness of their own heart. They're going to take a certain percentage so that they can earn a profit themselves. So every time we use an intermediary in the chain of distribution, the costs of the product increase. The more intermediaries, the higher the cost, and presumably the higher the final price to consumers. Everything else being equal. And we can also have a look at distribution channels in terms of levels of distribution. Now remember, place is one of those integrated components of the marketing mix. One of the 4 P's, they all work together to achieve a particular marketing objective. How do we come to choose which distribution channel we will use as an organization? Now consumers are going to need easy access. The easier the access to a firm's products, the easier it is for the consumer to purchase it. Easier it is for the consumer to purchase it, the more sales we're likely to make. And a lot of consumers like to see and try what they're buying before making the purchase decision. Just think of purchasing a pair of jeans. You can do it online, but the majority of people still prefer to go into the shop, try it on, make sure they fit, have a look around, comparison. Manufacturers need outlets for their products. outlets that give as wide a market coverage as possible. One retail store is likely to be insufficient, and a manufacturer may not own their own retail stores, but get them into specialist retail store providers. Now, any retailer, the firm who sells the final product to customers, is going to demand a markup to cover costs and make a profit. So this is something to take into account, integrating with the other 4 P's in the marketing mix, because those additional markup costs are going to affect the pricing strategy. The higher the cost, perhaps higher the price. There's several distribution strategies you need to be familiar with the IB Business and Management course. And the first is direct selling. Straight from the manufacturer to the consumer. Direct selling. Sometimes called a zero-channel distribution. Single intermediary channel is perhaps the most familiar. We've got the manufacturer making their product. They pass product onto a retail outlet, a retail shop, store, whatever, and then the consumer visits the retail store to get their hot little hands on our hot little product. Two intermediary channels. I hope you're realizing by now that an intermediary is someone between the manufacturer and the consumer. So when we talk about a single intermediary channel, we've just got one type of organization between the manufacturer and the consumer. Two intermediary channels, we've got 2 intermediaries, funnily enough. And here we've got a manufacturer or manufacturers feeding into a wholesaler. The wholesaler will be a specialist perhaps. They're going to break down the goods that they've bought in bulk, pass them on to the retailer. The retailer is going to pass it on to the consumer. Now, before the advent of internet technologies, this was perhaps the most common way for manufacturers to get their product to consumers. The 2 intermediary channel, distribution channel, wholesalers and retailers buying off the wholesalers and consumers buying off the retailer. And let's just have a look at this in a little bit more detail. Sometimes called the zero level channel. Producer straight to the consumer. No intermediaries. The most common way, direct mail, e-commerce, services as well, where customers can book their own flights, book their own hotel room. Straight from the producer to the consumer. No one in between, no intermediaries involved. A zero level channel. One level channel. We have got a variety of different one level channels that we need to be aware of. In between the producer and the consumer, we have got distributors, agents, or retailers. And as each of these only one intermediary between the producer and the consumer, we call it a one level channel. The 2 level channel, 2 intermediaries between the producer and the consumer, typically a wholesaler and a retailer. So the producer is using 2 middlemen, 2 middle people, 2 middle organizations to get their products to the consumers, which is what it's all about. Let's have a look for an example. We've got the producer, in this case a flower grower, the wholesaler, the big mass markets for flowers in Europe will purchase all the flowers they can of the producers, then on sell these flowers to retailers, and which is typically a florist, and then look at that, from the florist to the happy consumer. So producer, the farmer, the wholesaler, the big flower market, to the retailers, and eventually to the consumer. Channel of distribution, 2 level channel of distribution. Strategy is all important. Remember, it's an integrated strategy in line with marketing objectives, and everything tied together, linked together, seamlessly operating within that marketing mix. Right, and very important, it's flashing in front of you, the distribution channel needs to support all components of the marketing mix. Question mark. No question mark, it does. So several questions that the manufacturer, the producer of the product needs to ask themselves. Should the product be sold direct to consumers? Can the product go straight from us, the producer, directly to the consumer, cutting out all intermediaries? Is our product better served through being able to be sold through retailers? How many intermediaries are we going to need? Where should the product be made available? Is there a mixture of available outlets? Can we sell some of the product directly? Can we have some retail stores? Can we get our product in other retail stores? Electronic methods of distribution be used? In today's day and age, almost certainly. We're talking about internet-based technologies here to do our selling, e-commerce. Right, and importantly, costs. If we want to keep stock around, it's going to cost us to keep the products on store shelves and in channel warehouses. Warehouses forming part of our channel of distribution. Stock on hand is a cost to the company. How much control do we want to have over our own marketing mix for our particular product? The more intermediaries we are using, the less control we are likely to have over the marketing mix, how our product is represented, promoted, the price, etc. What factors are going to be influencing our choice of distribution channel? Industrial products, machine parts, etc. Now these tend to be sold more directly, less intermediaries than with consumer goods. The greater our geographical target market, the more large and widely dispersed our customers are, then the more likely it is that we're going to need to employ some intermediaries to sell and market our products for us. We need to think carefully about the level of service expected by consumers. If there's after-sales care, customer needs follow-ups, then that can limit the amount that we can market, sell, distribute our product over the internet. If our product is technically complex in nature, for example computer systems, then these are more likely to be sold directly. Specialist sales staff employed to go around to different businesses to put the hard sell on. They require a great deal of knowledge by sales staff. We need to have a look at the unit value of the product. For example, if the unit cost is extremely high to customers, it may be well worth employing specialist sales staff to market that product, sell that product. For example, luxury yachts would be an example. And the number of potential customers we have. Boeing, the maker of aircraft, very, very few customers worldwide, maybe about 100. Now they would use direct sales. Whereas the mass market, almost unlimited number of potential customers, we would need to make use of intermediaries. There's no way Coca-Cola is going to directly sell their product to every single consumer out here. They just couldn't do it. Right, tackle these questions, pause, and then we will see you again for supply chain management. Supply chain management, often referred to as logistics. Now, supply chain management is managing and controlling the sequence of activities from the production of a product to it being delivered to the end consumer. Right, so that's our definition.